Support handout number 19. I want to find the area of each triangle, and we know that the area is 1/2 times the base times the height. So in the first picture, I'll consider this to be the base, the bottom of the triangle. The height would be the perpendicular distance from the opposite vertex down to that side, which we were provided. It's just 5. Well, half of 14 is 7, times 5 would be 35. 35 square units. In the second picture, we'll use 24 for the base, and then the perpendicular from the opposite vertex down is this side over here. In a right triangle, this side is the height of the triangle. And so filling in my formula, half of 24 is 12, times 7 is 84 square units. Now we want to calculate the perimeter of each triangle. Perimeter means distance around the outer edge. So in the first triangle, it would be 14, plus 6 is 20, plus the 11 would be 31. And in the second triangle, it would be these three pieces added together. 7 plus 24 makes 31, plus 25 would be 56. 31 units and 56 units. Problem number 3, I have a right triangle. I have this angle labeled as alpha and a couple of sides, P and W. Part A says write an equation for P in terms of the other variables. In other words, I want an equation that says P equals, and on the other side is some stuff dealing with alpha and or W. In order to do that, I'm going to have to come up with something that links up these three letters. And of course, what I see is a trig relationship. If I focus on angle alpha here, the sine ratio of angle alpha involves those two pieces, those two sides. It would be the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So here's an equation that links up the pieces. How do I get P by itself? That's what I want. Well, all I would have to do is multiply both sides by W, and then I have accomplished the task. I have an equation for P in terms of the other letters in the problem. Now it says write an equation for alpha in terms of the other letters in the problem. Well, the starting step is going to be the same. I mean, I still have that basic relationship, sine alpha equals P over W. How do I now get the alpha by itself? How do I make a statement about the angle? Well, I know this is an acute angle because it's in a right triangle, which means therefore it would be found by simply taking the sine inverse of that P over W ratio. Alpha would be the inverse sine of P over W. Part C, the other side we're now going to call H. I want an equation for H in terms of alpha and W. So focus in on those three letters. What would link up those three pieces? It would be the cosine function. Cosine of angle alpha would be adjacent H over hypotenuse W. Again, if I multiply both sides by the W, I will have what I want, an equation for H using the other letters in the problem. H equals W cosine alpha. Okay, now I want an equation for H in terms of alpha and P. So here's my H, here's alpha, here's P. How do I link up those three pieces? Not using sine or cosine now. These pieces would be linked up using tangent because tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now I want to get the H by itself. That's going to take me a couple of steps. I'll multiply by H in order to clear the fractions. Now it says H tangent alpha equals P. To get H by itself, I'm going to have to divide both sides by this tangent alpha. And so my final answer, H equals P divided by tan alpha. I guess another thing I could have done there to avoid the fraction is work with the cotangent function instead. In other words, I could have said cotangent alpha is H over P instead of P over H, and then when I solved this for H, I would just get P cotangent alpha, and that would be just as good. Lastly, an equation for H in terms of P and W. So now I don't want to use the angle at all. I only want h, p, and w. Well, the equation that links those up would be the Pythagorean theorem. I would have h squared plus p squared equals w squared. And I just want to solve this for h. So I'll move the p squared to the other side and then just square root each side, and I have what I want. Final answer here would be h equals square root of w squared minus p squared. And there is no way to simplify that any further.